To win the leading female role, a beautiful young woman resorted to any means necessary. During the audition, she boldly ripped off her top right there, revealing her proud full breasts. The film is set in the 1980s. Superstar Hugh Ran always graced the front pages of major entertainment newspapers. She was a wildly popular actress who had starred in dozens of films and won countless prestigious awards. One day, Hugh Ran received an invitation to star in the film Lady Aema. However, as soon as she read the script, she found it filled with crude language and numerous daring sex scenes. Hugh Ran immediately threw the script aside with obvious disdain. After getting off the plane and going straight to the celebration party, Hugh Ran decisively took off her high heels, first punching the film studio director directly in the face, then kicking him straight into the swimming pool. The story was that, to stay relevant in the new era, this director, Mr. Koo, had publicly declared that sex would be the key element in his films, using explicit scenes of flesh to attract audience attention. This completely contradicted Hugh Ran's ideals. After the incident, she held a press conference and announced that although she had previously undressed countless times for roles, in this new era, she wanted to reinvent herself, try diverse roles, and refuse to undress. Seeing the news, director Koo was furious and humiliated. He decided to meet the director of Lady Aema, demanding that Hugh Ran be demoted to a supporting role, and then hold a public audition to find a new leading lady for the film. Hugh Ran quickly learned of this news. To disrupt the audition, she went directly to the location, met director Kwon, the film's director, and declared that she would help him choose the leading lady. Luckily, those who participated in the audition were all amateurs, completely lacking in talent. The first round of auditions completely failed. Everything was going exactly as Hugh Ran intended. Director Kwon was extremely frustrated, blaming himself for not wasting time with new talent. Who would have thought that as he was leaving the film studio, a girl in an alley caught his eye. The girl, Juan, was smoking, wearing factory worker clothes, yet exuded a unique and captivating charm. Seeing director Kwon, Juan introduced herself, saying she wasn't a worker but a new actress here to audition. With that, Juan ripped off her outer jacket, revealing a beautiful and seductive dance dress underneath. She pulled over an iron plate, put on silver tap shoes, and performed a vibrant tap dance. Director Kwon was immediately captivated by her and left his contact information for Juan on the spot. The next day, Juan went to the film studio to meet the director. This time, director Kwon took several photos of Juan, specifically asking her to pose with an arched chest, appearing both innocent and provocative. Director Koo was very satisfied with director Kwon's keen eye. At the same time, he reminded Juan that Lady Aema was an adult film, and she would have to perform extremely daring sex scenes. Juan seemed completely unbothered by this request. Just then, Hugh Ran aggressively strode in, walked straight up, and pulled open the curtain. She went directly to the point, exposing the unspoken rules of the entertainment industry. Suspecting that Juan got this role by sleeping with either the director or the chairman, facing the superstar, Juan showed no fear. First, she expressed that she was a loyal fan of Hugh Ran, always aspiring to become an actress like her senior, but immediately after, with an innocent face, she provocatively declared that she hadn't slept with anyone. She even sarcastically asked Hugh Ran who was more capable between the chairman and the director. To escape the film studio's grasp, Hugh Ran decided to meet another director named Won. Director Won was in the process of writing a new script, so Hugh Ran immediately nominated herself, hoping to star in his film. Unfortunately, director Won's script was still in its early stages. Hugh Ran had no choice but to instruct her manager to meet director Won's head of production, asking him to find every way to obtain that script. For Hugh Ran's career, the manager quickly went to meet the head of the department, serving and scrubbing his back, flattering him endlessly. Meanwhile, ever since being exposed by Hugh Ran about the unspoken rules, Juan suddenly disappeared without a trace. Director Kwon had to send people everywhere to search for her. Eventually, the company's staff found her, discovering Juan was working as a backup dancer for a singer at a nightclub. He clearly stated his purpose, hoping Juan could return for the audition, asserting that she was indeed the leading lady chosen by both the chairman and the director. However, Juan was not someone to be easily bullied. She resolutely refused to accept the unspoken rules, not letting others easily dictate her fate. That being said, when she saw a commercial featuring Hugh Ran on TV, Juan's inner yearning was rekindled, impossible to extinguish. Carrying that yearning, Juan, with an unyielding spirit, appeared at the second audition. For her dream of becoming an actress, Juan cast aside all hesitation. She tore open the buttons of her shirt, revealing her alluring cleavage. and declared that for acting, she could stake her entire life. In return, she demanded that the company turn her into a second Hu Ran. Facing Ju-an's public challenge, Hu Ran flatly retorted. For over a decade, hundreds of people had yearned to take her place every day, but not a single one had succeeded. Unexpectedly, Ju-an remained stubborn and arrogant, refusing to bow down, and certainly not obeying Hu Ran by leaving the set. To keep Ju-an, director Kwon did not hesitate to directly confront Hu Ran. Hu Ran angrily stormed off, and Ju-an's position as the leading lady was decided from that moment. After signing the contract, the film studio found Ju-an a luxurious apartment befitting her status. As soon as she moved in, she called her best friend, who used to work with her at the factory, to be her assistant. After being dealt a painful blow by Ju-an, Hu Ran, with an air of condescension, brought a colossal contract termination fee, determined to end her contract with the film studio. But director Koo refused to let her go. He said that as long as Hu Ran completed her final film under the contract, they would go their separate ways, hoping she would be a little patient instead of breaking industry rules. To avoid excessive media attention, Hu Ran reluctantly accepted for the time being, but she believed that she would remain the center of admiration, and the one ultimately rejected by the public would surely be the director who only cared about money. Director Koo had a mistress named Na-mi, also a new actress. The director's failure to cast her as the leading lady in Lady Aema made Na-mi very unhappy. To assert her dominance, early that morning, Na-mi handcuffed director Koo to the bed, made him wear pink underwear, and took some unflattering photos. She threatened that if the director ever dared to disrespect her again, these photos would be leaked. To prepare for Lady Aema, director Kwon continuously revised the script. The latest version cut 3 cleavage-exposing scenes, and daring shots were altered into more subtle, metaphorical images. This greatly displeased director Koo. He understood the market too well. Actresses showing cleavage meant audiences would find it eye-catching, and that was a guarantee for box office revenue. The director demanded that director Kwon revise the script back to the original version. Otherwise, he would replace the director. Having no choice, director Kwon had to comply, agreeing to add back the cleavage-exposing scenes. As for Hu Ran, she was also actively planning for her own career. That day, her manager finally obtained the first draft of director Won's latest script, titled Night of the Cannibal. After reading the script, Hu Ran was completely fascinated. That very night, she went to director Won's house again, earnestly begging him to let her play the leading female role. Director Won reminded Hu Ran that Night of the Cannibal also had many explicit scenes, but Hu Ran was completely unbothered. For the role, for art, she was willing to dedicate herself completely. Witnessing Hu Ran's passionate and obsessive demeanor, director Won's inspiration suddenly surged. He stayed up all night revising the script, using Hu Ran herself as a model to build the story with more depth and richness. Carrying the completed Night of the Cannibal script, director Won went to see director Koo, specifically wanting to collaborate with his film studio. But the mandatory requirement was that Hu Ran had to play the lead role. Director Won was a well-known figure, and director Koo naturally wanted to collaborate. However, instead of recommending Hu Ran, he brought his mistress Na-mi, hoping she would be the leading lady of Night of the Cannibal. However, director Won had been in the entertainment industry for too long. He could tell the relationship between Na-mi and director Koo with just a glance. At the same time, Na-mi's cheap and artificial demeanor could never catch his eye. In front of outsiders, director Won said some harsh words, making director Koo lose face. Words flew back and forth, and ultimately, the two men started fighting right in the middle of the cafe. Witnessing director Kwon and director Koo fighting until they were battered and bruised, Hu Ran knew that the Night of the Cannibal project starring her was likely to have vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, preparations for Lady Aema were progressing very smoothly. The head of production brought Ju-an to the studio of a famous fashion designer, asking the designer to eliminate Ju-an's country bumpkin appearance and transform her into a superstar. The designer selected many outfits for Ju-an, but she particularly liked one that was designed specifically for Hu Ran. However, with her figure and aura, she couldn't fully capture the essence of that outfit. Therefore, Ju-an arbitrarily changed the design, especially intentionally lowering the neckline. At the film's press conference not long after, recognizing that Ju-an was wearing an outfit that originally belonged to her, Hu Ran used a mocking tone, poking at Ju-an's chest, then angrily ripped off the belt of the dress, criticizing her for arbitrarily ruining the designer's work, cutting the neckline too vulgarly. But Ju-an didn't back down either, arguing that she only lowered the neckline a little, and that didn't mean it was vulgar. After the press conference, Ju-an had to learn horseback riding. In the film, Lady Aema, there were many implicit scenes about sex between the female lead and the horse. Ju-an had never ridden a horse before, but thanks to her talent, she quickly became acquainted with and controlled the horse skillfully. However, troubles kept coming one after another. Before filming even began, the censorship committee of the Ministry of Culture ordered the script to be revised, requiring changes in 36 places. Director Kwan was furious, but still had to compromise. He decided to follow Director Ku's instructions, turning the 36 sex scenes into metaphorical images. Among them, the first thing to be revised was the film's title. According to the Ministry of Culture, the name, Aema, loving horses, sounded too lewd. Director Kwan and the director racked their brains, finally deciding to change the word horse to the word numb. Thus, the adult film, Loving Horses Lady, was renamed to Loving Numb Lady, a more discreet and metaphorical name. Just as they had resolved the film's name, the next difficulty struck. Hu-ran received a call, learning that the male lead of the film had been in a car accident. He had broken bones and had to be bedridden. Hu-ran originally intended to use this opportunity to ruin the film, but Director Ku demanded that everything still proceed according to plan, and that they would find a new male lead. Under the director's persistence, the film officially began shooting not long after. The film crew rushed to a mountainous area. While everyone was busy setting up the scene, Ju-an diligently studied the script and asked Director Kwan why he had chosen her initially. Director Kwan couldn't explain it clearly either. Perhaps one of the reasons was Ju-an's proud, full breasts. Ju-an didn't feel ashamed at all. On the contrary, she was very proud of it. From a young age, she had developed earlier than girls of the same age. She believed that a beautiful chest like hers should be flaunted before the camera. Inspired by Ju-an, Director Kwan stayed up all night to complete the final revision of the script, turning all the explicit scenes into metaphorical images, as required by the Ministry of Culture. After holding a prayer ceremony, the film officially started shooting. As a seasoned veteran, Hu-ran quickly immersed herself in the role, and her acting received much praise. In contrast, as a newcomer, Ju-an had not yet been able to integrate into the character of Loving Numb Lady, and her lines were also faltering. Hu-ran used this opportunity to mock her, and even lazily refused to act opposite Ju-an, occasionally having a stunt double replace her. Ju-an, with a stubborn attitude, went to meet Hu-ran, believing that everyone had a first time, hoping her senior would give her a chance, because she was working very hard to play this role well. Hu-ran still didn't show any respect, bluntly saying that acting often relied on talent, rather than effort, and that Ju-an's thinking was too naive. Next was a scene of the female lead undergoing acupuncture. According to the script and the director's request, the character had to express the pleasure that coexisted with the pain. Ju-an tried her best to immerse herself in the role, groaning while receiving acupuncture. Hu-ran couldn't stand the unusual acupuncture scene and the director's unreasonable demands, so she once again walked off the set. Ju-an chased after her, scolding Hu-ran for being irresponsible, and in response, received a slap from her senior. Hu-ran warned Ju-an not to blindly believe in the script or the director's judgment, and also warned this eager-to-succeed junior not to be arrogant in front of her. But when she turned back, Hu-ran discovered that her manager had mistakenly taken Ju-an's script. Opening Ju-an's script, she saw it was filled with notes and markings. There was one page that read, "Must become a cool lady like Hu-ran." While Hu-ran wasn't there, Ju-an helped the director come up with a great filming idea: how to shoot a nude scene without exposing bare breasts. Use rain. Just have it rain and the body will be soaked. If she wore a thin layer of clothing like mist, the chest would be subtly visible and hidden. The director slammed his hand on the table in praise, immediately putting it into practice, ordering the film crew to prepare an artificial rainstorm. Under the nighttime rain, the character Madame Aema, played by Ju-an, wore a white dress, weaving through the misty forest. Her alluring chest under the rain became even more sensual. The next scene was an important sex scene between the male and female leads. Although Ju-an was still a virgin, with her sensitivity, she and the male lead created a passionate and emotional bed scene. After this scene, Director Kwan finally acknowledged Ju-an's acting ability. In the midst of that, the Ministry of Culture's staff suddenly drove up and demanded they stop filming. Director Ku didn't understand what was happening, because to please the Ministry of Culture, he had someone bring a suitcase of money and ginseng that morning to bribe them. Not long after, the Ministry of Culture's staff came to the film studio. This man hinted to Director Ku that Seoul would soon win the right to host the Olympic Games. High-ranking officials would hold a celebration party, and that party needed women, especially beautiful women. As soon as he heard the word, women, Director Koo shrewdly understood the Ministry of Culture's intentions. He promised to bring Ju-an, the rising star, to the party to serve drinks to the bigwigs. After appeasing the Ministry of Culture's staff, Director Koo found a way to persuade Ju-an. Ju-an knew that her fate was in the hands of the film studio. With her low social status, she had no other choice but to agree. Her best friend advised Ju-an not to willingly walk into a trap, but Ju-an kept a cool head. She knew that if she missed the opportunity to be the leading lady this time, the only thing waiting for her would be the fate of returning home to wash dishes. To seize this opportunity, Ju-an had to go to the party. Upon arrival, a woman ordered Ju-an to take off all her clothes. Ju-an suppressed her humiliation and took off her dress. The woman carefully inspected Ju-an's youthful naked body, then ordered a servant to make her wear the outfit that the high-ranking officials preferred. She was forced to put on makeup in the style favored by the aristocracy, and then forced to put her fingerprint on a non-disclosure agreement, requiring her not to reveal anything she heard or saw at the party. With a worried heart, Ju-an stepped inside. As expected, before her was a scene of decadence and debauchery from the powerful elite. But what surprised Ju-an even more was that Hu-ran was also there. The lecherous officials began vying to tease Ju-an. One of them was the president himself. After having an entire bottle of champagne poured on her, Ju-an gradually regained her senses. With her usual stubbornness, she sat down next to the president. He was also a lecher, his hand gliding over Ju-an's skin, lightly sniffing the alluring scent on her body. Trapped in the den of men in power, the small Ju-an could only drink the glass of wine that the president had just stirred with his finger, and passively accept the depraved and rotten pleasures before her eyes. During a break, Hu-ran went into the bathroom to talk to Ju-an. She advised Ju-an to come to her senses. She was just a newcomer with nothing in her hands, not qualified to risk sacrificing herself to protect the whole film. Hu-ran's words awakened Ju-an. A moment later, Ju-an was taken to the president's room. He no longer concealed his intentions, directly touching her sensitive areas. But this time, Ju-an chose to refuse. She frankly said she was just a small actress, hoping the president would let her go. The president, indeed, showed great mercy and spared Ju-an. After she left, Hu-ran went to see the president, tactfully saying words to help Ju-an. Leaving the party, Hu-ran angrily slapped Director Koo directly in the face, scolding him for daring to take a new actress, who hadn't even debuted yet, and use her as a transaction. However, scolding aside, to prevent the events at the party from becoming a big deal, Hu-ran still obtained the permit to film Madame Aema, but demanded that the script be revised according to her wishes. The next day, Ju-an went to Hu-ran's house to thank her for what happened yesterday. This was also the first time she told Hu-ran the secret story in her heart. Since her mother passed away, Ju-an had lived with her father and 4 brothers. As the only woman in the house, she had to wash underwear for 5 men every day. She was so tired of that life and vowed never to return. Hearing Ju-an's story, Hu-ran didn't entirely sympathize. According to her, countless girls who wanted to change their fate had similar stories. What she was more interested in was, besides her family situation, why Ju-an chose to become an actress. Ju-an replied that it was because acting helped her find her true self, helping her release the repressions in her heart. It was also thanks to Hu-ran's question that Ju-an gradually rediscovered the precious self that she had lost. That day, Ju-an folded many paper cranes in her apartment. The cranes were folded from 1 million won in cash, the amount the president's chief of staff had given her when she left last night. Ju-an didn't keep this money, but gave it all to a conscientious but struggling journalist, hoping he would use that money for operational expenses. Ju-an's sincere answer also made Hu-ran look back at herself in the past. She flipped through old scripts, looking at the dense notes written on them, and something in her heart began to rekindle. After that day, Hu-ran proactively met Director Kwan to seriously discuss the script. She realized his script was filled with meaningless scenes of pleasure. For example, after meeting her first love in the elevator, the female lead immediately had physical sensations in a miraculous way. Or the male lead often ran downstairs without reason to violate the female lead, and she happily welcomed it. Hu-ran realized that Director Kwan said he wanted to portray women's desires, but in reality, he didn't understand women at all. His storytelling style completely stemmed from a male perspective, causing the female characters in the film to become masochists, accustomed to being violated. However, the film was already half shot, and the scenes that had been filmed were difficult to discard. After much deliberation, Hu-ran proposed turning the film into a bizarre, illogical adult film. Based on Hu-ran's suggestion, Director Kwan went crazy and revised the script again. This was the final version. The latter half of the film was shot according to the new script. In the new story, the ex-lover male lead tried to violate the female lead Aema. While Aema was in pain, and half-heartedly resisting. The supporting female character played by Ran appeared in a Western cowgirl outfit. Aema rejected the ex-lover's advances and called out to the cowgirl for help. To protect Aema, the cowgirl quickly drew her whip, teaching that arrogant man a lesson he would never forget. Also a bizarre, illogical adult film. But this time, it was told from a female perspective, directly punishing the abuser, making the audience feel extremely satisfied. That evening, at the end of the shoot, Ju-an flashed a smile that had not been seen on her lips for a long time. Afterward, Ju-an chased after Ran's car and gave her card to the conscientious journalist, hoping that it might be of use to her someday. In the last scene of the film, Aema and the cowgirl rode together across the prairie. The cowgirl passed on to Aema the truth of life, hoping she would live honestly, being herself, and not living for anyone else. The scene of the two women tearfully looking at each other on the prairie elevated the theme of the film to a new level, and the film officially wrapped production from here. However, the film wrapping didn't mean the story had ended. Ran had completed her final film at the film studio, and it was time for her and director Koo to go their separate ways. But the director was extremely cunning. He went back on his word, saying that the contract clearly stated that Ran had to star in 12 of the company's films, but in Loving Nun Lady, she was only a supporting role, so it didn't count. With that, director Koo presented another daring script, demanding that Ran continue acting. Only after finishing this film would he let her go. But Ran was no pushover. She grabbed the trophies and medals in the office, throwing them directly at the unscrupulous director. Then she delivered a powerful punch, sending him flying out the window. That night happened to be New Year's Eve 1982. Also on that night, director Koo had to welcome the new year at the police station for destroying public property, while Ran, thanks to her status as a star, leisurely left the police station. To welcome the new year, Ran made a special decision. She decided to break into director Koo's safe to steal back her contract. After breaking into the office, Ran used a gun to fire 2 shots, easily opening the safe. But she didn't expect that hidden inside the safe was a black book. The book listed the names of the actresses, who had been arranged by the director to attend parties, to entertain guests over the years. The most recent name on the list was Ju-an, and next to each name was clearly written the number of gold bars received. Seeing the gold bars piled up in the safe, Ran was shocked to realize that director Koo was even more despicable than she thought. He had been using the actresses under his control to carry out quid pro quo transactions. Unfortunately, director Koo was released on bail earlier than expected and returned to the company. While her manager was trying to stall him, Ran decisively snatched the black book. Unfortunately, the director quickly caught up. He subdued Ran, snatched back the book, and quickly threw it into the fire to destroy the evidence. As for Ran, out of a soft heart, she only shot him in the hand rather than taking that scoundrel's life. Director Kwon had completed the rough cut of Madame Aema. However, after watching it, the director was not satisfied. He felt that Ran's cowgirl character was too cool to smear Ran and make the audience feel good. Director Koo arbitrarily changed the director's cut, hiring another film editor and completing the final version according to his own wishes. As a result, under the director's careless editing, the originally decent film turned into a cheap adult film, only aimed at attracting audiences. Ran couldn't restrain her anger, and she went to ride a horse to relieve her stress. But she met Ju-an in the stable. Ju-an was also feeling confused. Seeing this, Ran decided to go all the way. That night, she took Ju-an to a desolate place. There, Ran's manager was digging a hole. Ju-an lifted the tarp on the car next to it, and discovered that the car was full of the original film reels of Madame Aema. That's right, Ran had stolen the original film reels, and intended to burn all this trash. This was not the first time she had this intention. As an actress, over the years, she had always poured her heart into acting. But in the end, what was shown on the big screen were all vulgar adult works that had been cut and pieced together by director Koo. Although she felt a bit regretful, Ju-an still agreed with Ran's actions. She decisively poured gasoline into the hole that the manager had dug. But unexpectedly, just as the two women were about to light the fire, Director Kwon suddenly ran over and desperately tried to stop them. He said that even if the final version was trash, it was still a work that he had directed. Faced with the director's advice, Ran finally gave up the plan, returning the film reels to the car. After all, this film was the director's heart and soul, and also Ju-an's debut work. Before the film was released, Nam-ee, director Koo's mistress, attended a party. The situation was similar to Ju-an's previous experience, but this time, the hosts of the party were all the children and grandchildren of the powerful elite. There, Na Mai was forced to take drugs, and eventually died on the spot. It was still the same chief of staff in charge of the previous party who came forward, promising Director Koo that he would handle everything smoothly. This man announced that the president would soon lift the curfew that had lasted for 36 years. At that time, Madame Aema would be promoted as the first late-night showing in Korean history, and Director Koo would make a lot of money. For money, the director chose to remain silent about his mistress's death. Not long after, the curfew was completely lifted. Madame Aema, the first late-night showing and adult film in Korean history, was officially released in theaters. That night, the first screening at a theater in Seoul was completely sold out. Of course, the version that was released was the vulgar version cut and pieced together by Director Koo. Ju-an's friends came to the theater to support her. After discovering that this was a bold adult film, everyone looked at each other in astonishment. But in reality, her girlfriends really liked the explicit scenes in the film, thanks to the enthusiastic attention from both men and women for many days in a row. All screenings of the film were sold out. The box office record was also broken, with thousands and tens of thousands of viewers flocking to the theater. As the leading lady, Ju-an naturally also became the center of attention, noticed by the entire country. To aim for the prestigious Grand Bell Awards, Ju-an began her photography and promotional activities. Very quickly, Director Koo, with his sharp business sense, gave Ju-an a contract, promising that as long as she signed, he would ensure she became a second Hugh Ran. Facing the fierce competition at the Grand Bell Awards, Hugh Ran appeared extremely calm. Conversely, the news of the death of Na Mi, Director Koo's mistress, attracted her attention. Similarly, when she saw a photo of Na Mi in her lifetime on the newspaper, Ju-an's heart was weighed down by an indescribable feeling. When filming, Madame Aema, Na Mai had said that she and Ju-an were very similar, both possessing a face of desire. At Na Mi's funeral, Hugh Ran and Ju-an were the only two colleagues who attended. When she saw a film poster of Hugh Ran in Na Mi's room, Ju-an realized that, just like herself, Na Mi had always seen Hugh Ran as her goal and idol. Witnessing a death firsthand, Hugh Ran and Ju-an seemed to have reached a crossroads in their lives. Hugh Ran sighed with emotion. Over the years, she had always dedicated herself to her roles, to cinema, as if that dedication was to hold on to some kind of halo. But now, too many ridiculous and absurd things had happened, making her no longer afraid of loss. After crying to her heart's content, Hugh Ran proactively arranged to meet with Director Koo. When the death of Na Mi was mentioned, he still appeared nonchalant. Hugh Ran responded with a cold smile. "It's okay if the books were burned. From now on, I'll drag you down to hell with me." Hugh Ran's words were not empty threats. To overthrow Director Koo, she began meticulously planning in the dark. The Grand Bell Awards ceremony was approaching, and Hugh Ran had bet everything on that day. Therefore, she went to see the fashion designer she had collaborated with for decades. With tears in her eyes, she begged him, saying the ceremony was extremely important to her. She had to appear in the most perfect way. The designer was very touched and promised to let Hugh Ran wear his most beautiful creation. However, a dirty journalist informed Director Koo that the results of the Grand Bell Awards had been pre-arranged. If nothing changed, Ju-an would win Best Actress, while Hugh Ran would receive Best Supporting Actress. However, Director Koo played dirty behind the scenes. The awards were secretly manipulated by the dirty journalist's newspaper, and Director Koo asked this journalist to remove Hugh Ran from the list of award recipients. In exchange, he promised the journalist an exclusive interview and the opportunity to do whatever he wanted to Ju-an. On the day of the interview, the journalist intentionally brought the dance dress that Ju-an used to wear when she was a dancer, forcing her to change in front of him, also demanding to take a close-up photo of her face. However, the journalist's harassment only earned him Ju-an's sarcasm. She mocked the journalist for being impotent, and upon leaving, didn't forget to punch him hard in his sensitive spot. But very soon after, Ju-an's actions were avenged by the journalist. He wrote an article slandering Ju-an, fabricating that she used to be a hostess at a nightclub. The absurd rumors quickly spread everywhere, causing Ju-an to be overwhelmed with confusion for a time. Finally, the awards ceremony arrived. On the red carpet, Hugh Ran appeared first, followed by Ju-an. What surprised the reporters was that Ju-an didn't arrive by car, but wore her dance dress and rode a horse directly to the scene. The reporters simultaneously applauded in praise. Everyone understood that this was Ju-an's strongest response to the rumors. When it came time for the awards, the Best Actress award didn't go to either Hugh Ran or Ju-an. Hugh Ran didn't seem surprised at this result. Next was the Lifetime Achievement Award, and the recipient was Director Kwon, the author of Night of the Cannibal. However, unexpectedly, Director Kwon invited Hugh Ran, who hadn't received an award at all, to the stage. In reality, this was something that Hu Ran had asked director Kwon to do. From the beginning, she had known that director Koo would certainly play dirty, so she wouldn't receive the Best Supporting Actress award. But she absolutely had to stand on this stage, because she had something to say to everyone. What Hu Ran wanted to say was the secret about director Koo's Black Book, the scandal about the elite buying off actresses to serve their debauched pleasures. To expose this secret, this time, Hu Ran had bet everything she had. At the same time Hu Ran was speaking, the conscientious journalist who had partnered with her was outside distributing leaflets. The contents of the leaflets were details about the directors and the elite's transactions, the shocking scandals that followed one after another. As Hu Ran was speaking on stage, chaos erupted below. The chief of staff turned purple with anger, lunging forward with a ferocious look, intending to grab Hu Ran. But unexpectedly, upon seeing the leaflets exposing the scandals of the elite, and learning about the existence of the Black Book, he immediately turned around and ordered Director Koo's arrest. While the director was being arrested, his henchmen were chasing after Hu Ran. Fortunately, the designer's staff helped block the hallway, creating time for Hu Ran to escape. Outside, her manager had driven up to rescue her, but unfortunately, they were surrounded by the chief of staff's henchmen. The manager couldn't escape and was arrested. Seeing that she was about to be the next to be arrested, in a critical moment, Hu Ran saw Ju-an riding a horse at the end of the street. In the midst of the chaos, Ju-an had read the content on the leaflets, understood Hu Ran's courage, and all the confusion in her heart vanished. Now, seeing Hu Ran in danger, Ju-an decisively spurred her horse forward, knocking away the henchmen and successfully rescuing Hu Ran from the encirclement. Under the night sky, the two women fled on horseback, relying on each other to overcome each obstacle and finally shake off their pursuers. Under Hu Ran's guidance, the two arrived at a secret base of journalists. Here, Hu Ran learned that the conscientious journalist who had helped her had just been arrested and was in a very critical situation. She retrieved the secret documents that she had sent to the remaining journalists for safekeeping. At the Central Intelligence Agency in Namsan, the arrested manager and journalist were being interrogated. Even Director Koo, who had once been so powerful, was no exception. To find the whereabouts of the Black Book, the chief of staff had turned on them, using brutal torture on Director Koo. Perhaps he never thought that his golden life would end so tragically. Hu Ran entered the lion's den alone, carrying the secret documents to Namsan to meet the director of the intelligence agency. In the documents was a page that Hu Ran had torn out and taken from Director Koo's Black Book, on which the director of the agency's name appeared. Hu Ran wanted to use it as a bargaining chip, hoping the director would release her friends. In return, she would let everything die down. If the director refused, Hu Ran believed that with the leaflets that had been distributed and the life-risking resistance from one actress to another, the elite scandal would never end. To protect himself, the director secretly arrested the chief of staff in charge of the interrogation. The manager and the journalist were thus released. The situation finally calmed down temporarily. That night, Director Kwon watched the cut of Madame Aema that he himself had created. Recalling what the two women had gone through, he couldn't hold back his tears. Hu Ran and Ju-an hugged tightly, cherishing their farewell. Although they would be in different places in the future, Hu Ran believed that the Ju-an she knew would never give up. Just as Hu Ran predicted, the stubborn girl Ju-an had grown up powerfully. Now, she had crossed the sea to Japan to establish her career, becoming a promising rising star in the talk show industry there. Once, Ju-an was a guest on a program. Before the camera, her eyes no longer had the naivete of the past, but still exuded the familiar determination and tenacity. To her, life was like a boxing ring. If you don't want to fall, what you need to rely on is not mechanical effort, but the stubbornness to dare to fight with all your might every day, along with the resilience that is deeply ingrained in your bones. Outside the camera, in a distant place, Hu Ran was watching Ju-an's interview. She smiled peacefully. In this world, no one understood better than her that the words Ju-an spoke were both inspired by her and spoken to herself. At this time, Hu Ran was preparing to participate in Director Kwon's new film project, Night of the Cannibal. And also on that day, Ju-an returned from Japan. On the plane, her manager gave her some scripts. All were bold adult films. Ju-an looked at them and gently put them down. Looking at the horizon that was right in front of her, Ju-an knew that she was about to reunite with her brave, fearless old friend, who dared to stand up against everything. Alright, that's all for today. You are welcome to like, leave comments, and follow my channel to binge watch movies. Goodbye everyone.